Hi, Pop Top here. Today I am going to explain an action dinosaur movie called 65. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The movie opens on a planet called Ceres, where we see a girl named Naven practicing hand whistling on a beach. Her parents, Mills and Alia, are watching her with admiration, and we learn that Mills is leaving on a 2-year space exploration mission and hasn't yet told his daughter. The couple is worried since Mills has never been gone for that long and is doing all this to afford treatment for Naveen, who is sick. Next, Mills approaches Naveen and teaches her music how to whistle, during which she tells him that she knows he's going to leave again and that it's because of her. However, he assures her that it's not for a long time, and the music too spend time making many beautiful memories before the trip. Sometime later, we see Mills piloting a spaceship while the rest of the crew lies in cryogenic sleep. On the journey, something goes terribly wrong as the ship suddenly enters an asteroid belt. Mills immediately receives an alarm signal music just as space debris slams into the ship's hull and damages it. Mills now desperately tries to regain control music of the failing systems, but to no avail. With no other option, he is forced to make an emergency landing on an unknown planet. As the ship crashes toward the music surface, it breaks in two and Mills recalls memories of his daughter before losing consciousness. Sometime later, Mills wakes up and removes a piece of metal embedded in his stomach before tending to his wounds. He then puts on his spacesuit and begins investigating the spaceship, where he finds out that the cryopsids are missing. Mills grabs a weapon and heads outside, where he is horrified to discover the dead bodies of all of his crew. He checks his coordinates and sends a distress signal before taking off his space suit. Surprisingly, the planet's atmosphere is breathable, but an overwhelmed Mills loses the will to live and attempts to shoot himself, but he eventually stops and begins watching Veda's music that his daughter sent him, which brings him to tears. Moments later, Mills receives a signal from a Cerberus capsule, so he immediately hurries to the location. He eventually comes across a cryopod where he notices a little girl who is still alive. He pulls the unconscious girl out and carries her back towards the remains of the ship. On the way, he notices the print of a huge paw in the wet ground, which leaves him, well, confused. In a shocking twist, we learn that the planet Mills has landed on is none other than Earth, and the events of the movie take place 65 million years before the present timeline music during the age of dinosaurs. The next day, Mills tries to locate the half of the spaceship music that contains the escape pods, but the scanner fails to detect it. He thus goes out to explore the surrounding area and soon comes across the massive skeletal remains of a giant creature which appears to have died right on top of a geyser after the hot water erupted, and it would be a long time before a dinosaur trusted a bed again. As he moves forward, he catches a sudden flash of light in the distance. Music. He scans the area and soon realizes that the other half of the spaceship lies far away up in the mountains. At this moment, Mills is suddenly attacked by a raptor, but he easily, oh, that sounded weird, but he easily manages to overpower the animal and beats it to death. While Mills is returning to the ship, he hears noises coming from the woods, but it turns out to be the girl whom he rescued last night. Mills tries to approach her, but the girl immediately starts running away, leading to a chase. Soon, both of them roll down a slope and land near the carcass of a dinosaur. All of a sudden, they hear a deep grunt music and notice a massive dinosaur approaching, prompting them to run away. Upon returning to the ship, Mills tends to the girl's wounds and asks for her name, but she speaks in a language that he doesn't understand. He checks the ship's passenger list and learns that her name is Poe, which she also confirms. Mills then explains that the only way to leave the planet is to find the escape pod, which is located at the top of a mountain. Since she doesn't understand him, he snorts, makes some drawings, which finally helps her to grasp music the idea. She also makes a drawing and asks about her parents. So Mills tells her that they are in the mountains as well and teaches her the word family. Afterwards, Mills records a new distress message explaining that he has found a girl who's alive and requesting assistance. In another room, Poe discovers some video messages from Naveen to her father and begins eagerly watching them. It turns out that Mills had already completed his exploration mission and was returning home after 2 years when the spaceship crashed. The messages appear cheerful at first, but soon Naveen Music is shown very sick and visibly distraught over her father's absence. But before Poe can watch further, Mills arrives and turns off that video before urging her to get moving. Following this, Mills carries some small bombs, and the two begin walking through the woods filled with dangerous creatures. During the journey, Poe notices something glowing in the sky, but she doesn't give it much attention. She soon finds some berries in the woods and starts throwing them at Mills to tease them. He puts one into the scanner and discovers that the berries are poisonous. Mills thus scolds the girl and warns her not to play with the berries, which she also understands. Somehow, even though music she doesn't speak English. Sometime later, the two spot a small dinosaur trapped in a swamp. Music and Code immediately rushes to help it despite Mills warning her not to. However, he also eventually joins her, and together they manage to free the struggling creature. Music but the dinosaur can't get far before it is suddenly attacked by a pack of predators who begin tearing it apart. Ko is horrified by the brutal scene music and starts crying, so Mills quickly grabs her and hides behind a nearby stump to avoid attracting the predators' music attention. After the creatures finally leave, Mills and Ko continue their journey and soon stop at the shore of a stream. When their water bottle runs empty, Mills asks Kat to fill it from the river. It must be clean. It won't kill us. She obliges, during which Mills watches her with fondness and misses his own daughter. Later, Kai returns with a flower along with the water and tries to place it in his hair. Mills refuses at first. No, you will make me look gay. But when he sees her looking disappointed, he finally lets her tuck the flower into his hair. Next, the two continue their journey, but soon Mills loses track of the other half of the spaceship. So he decides to climb a tree to scan the area. He manages to locate the ship, but suddenly a swarm of bugs crawls onto his hand. As he tries to shake them off, he loses his balance and falls to the ground, dislocating his shoulder. A planet of dinosaurs and the bugs are what got him. Groaning in pain, Mills limps back music to the tree, but at this moment, a group of dangerous dinosaurs appears nearby. Mills thus makes Poe step on his arm, after which he finally manages to fix his shoulder. He then begins shooting at the approaching dinosaurs, but seeing that there are too many, he tells Poe to run to safety. Following this, Poe immediately runs away and hides next to a trunk, while Mills throws bombs at the dinosaurs. Meanwhile, Poe listens to the sounds of shooting, but soon realizes that more dinosaurs have appeared nearby. The poor girl tries to escape, but they relentlessly chase her and get very close. Just when all hope seems lost, Mills arrives and kills all of them with his gun. Unfortunately, one of the dinosaurs survives and grabs Ko before dragging her into the woods. Mills immediately gives chase and scares the creature away with a shot while managing to rescue Poe. The whole experience leaves the little girl shaken, so even though Mills cannot communicate with her, Mizuki stays by her side to provide comfort. Sometime later, it becomes dark and Mills teaches Ka to make whistles with her hands, just like he used to teach his daughter. The two then continue on their journey, and after walking for a while, they find a cave where they decide to spend the music night. There, Mills sets up some motion sensors to warn him of any nearby danger and checks the navigator. He discovers that the asteroid that caused the crash is not the biggest problem, as there is a giant asteroid heading music straight for the planet. This makes him worried, but just then Ko distracts him by showing that she took a disc which contains the video messages from Naveen. Mills gets angry at her for taking it without permission, which makes Kay upset as well. Eventually, Mills turns on the recording and they begin watching Naveen's hologram projection to find comfort music amid the crisis. Later, while Mills is trying to sleep, He recalls when Aaliyah contacted him to tell him that Naveen had died in the hospital, causing him to break down in tears. That night, the motion sensors detect movement, which wakes up Mills. He approaches Ko, who is sleeping, but foam is coming from her mouth, which makes him worry. Mills quickly opens her mouth and finds an insect inside, which he carefully pulls out. However, the danger is not over, as there is a huge dinosaur near the entrance to the cave. Mills quickly shoots and hurts the music creature's one eye, so the angry dinosaur now begins to knock down the cave. The duo thus heads deep music into the cave, where the huge predator won't be able to enter. Mills now uses his device to look for an exit route, but soon comes across many smaller dinosaurs inside, which are also dangerous. The duo thus once again begins running deeper inside, and soon they reach a dead end. A frustrated Mills now tries to dig and expand the cave, but it is not easy and hours pass by without progress. However, Ko is very determined, and she tries to dig further in a desperate attempt to find her family. Upon seeing this, Mills admits that he lied and her parents are not waiting at the mountain, but Ko doesn't understand the language and continues digging, which makes the man feel bad. Next, Mills comes up with an idea and uses the small bombs to expand music the cave, which finally works. After the successful expansion of the passage, Mills gives the girl a couple of bombs, just music in case they get separated. The two then begin to crawl along the narrow path, but unfortunately, the explosion destabilizes the rocks. The cave suddenly begins to collapse, which causes both of them to separate. Mills is worried for the girl and fears that she might have died, but he soon hears Ko making the whistling sound, making him relieved. Following this, Mills looks for another route to leave, but on the way, he comes across a massive dinosaur, which he had scared earlier with gunshots. Music it is very dark and Mills can't see much, so he activates proximity scanning on music his device and detects that the dinosaur is behind him. A fierce fight breaks out between them, during which the dinosaur makes Mills drop his gun before the guy even gets a chance to music shoot. The animal then begins biting his arm, but Mills fights it off and soon reaches for his scanner, which emits a high-pitched music sound. This distracts the dinosaur, during which Mills retrieves his gun and shoots the animal to death. The scene then cuts to Poe, who is wandering in the woods and finds a huge bond. She takes it as a weapon and covers it with poisonous berries before wrapping it in a large leaf. She then puts it in her backpack and continues her journey, while on the other hand, Mills finally leaves the cave. He sees a bright object in the sky and uses his device to scan it. The device informs him that a catastrophic impact from the asteroid is imminent and that they have roughly 12 hours to escape. The worried man now goes to look for Chloe and soon hears her screaming as she is approached by a dinosaur. Mills immediately rushes to help her but stumbles into the swamp, which begins to suck him up. Elsewhere, Kay hides inside a dried-up tree, which turns out to be a trap for the dinosaur. As soon as the animal enters, she leaves and blocks the entrance before throwing the small bombs inside. This causes an explosion in which the dinosaur is killed. He then hears Mills screaming and we see him sinking into the swamp with only his head above the surface. At the last moment, Poe tilts a fallen branch toward him, allowing the man to pull himself free. Mills hugs her and thanks her, then points to the asteroid blazing across the sky, which means that they must hurry. Following this, they continue forward, and as night falls, the sky is stirred with the first meteors. Soon, they reach a steep cliff, where Mills helps the girl climb up so she can secure the rope. She then ties the rope onto a huge rock and throws it down for him to climb as well. The two eventually reach the missing half of the ship, where Mills checks the escape pods and confirms that they are operational. He then receives a message stating that a rescue spaceship is on its way, which leaves him relieved. However, Poe is not happy as she begins to look for her parents, whom she cannot find anywhere, and the cryptids are destroyed. She grows furious with Mills for lying to her as the sky suddenly lights up with meteors burning through the thick atmosphere. Mills then comforts the grieving girl and begins to talk about his daughter. He says that he went on the exploration mission to earn money for her treatment, but she passed away anyway, leaving him devastated. Mills breaks down and Mizik promises to take the girl home, and even though Ku doesn't understand his words, she feels his sadness. Mizik and hugs him. At this moment, a meteorite lands in a nearby forest, which is just one of many fragments from a massive asteroid heading toward the planet. This panics the duo, who quickly jump into the escape pod and prepare for takeoff. Suddenly, two meteorites strike the ship, causing them to fall from the mountain. Mills is knocked unconscious during the process, and when Ku tries to initiate takeoff, the computer informs her that launch is impossible in their current position. Moments later, Mills finally wakes up, but before they can escape, a massive T-Rex appears and begins attacking the pod. Mills notices that his weapon is outside, so he unbuckles and rushes out to retrieve it. He attempts to shoot the dinosaur, but the weapon fails to activate. To make matters worse, another T-Rex appears and joins Mizik the attack. When I saw this movie in theaters at this point, this guy shouted, "Oh my God, there's two." While the two dinosaurs sniff each other, Mills takes cover behind a piece of ship and quickly reprograms the gun. Moments later, the dinosaurs crush the area where Mills is hiding, leaving him badly injured. He feels very trapped and helpless. When Code grabs his device and projects a holographic projection of Naveen, who is delivering a message about how much she loved him, this makes Mills overwhelmed with emotion, while the two T-Rexes mistake the hologram for something real and attempt to attack it. Taking advantage of the distraction, Mills Koi unexpectedly shows up and stabs the dinosaur in the eye with the bond she had filled with poisonous berries earlier. The dinosaur groans in pain, and at this moment, the geyser erupts again, sending Mizik a stream of boiling water straight up its goo and scalding the creature to death. Following this, the duo breathes a sigh of relief and returns Mizik to the escape pod, after which they immediately take off. Seconds later, a huge asteroid strikes the Earth, causing a massive explosion that presumably leads to the extinction of all the dinosaurs. As the duo flies towards the rescued vessel waiting for them, Mills closes his eyes and remembers some of his final moments with his daughter. For a brief moment, it seems he might succumb to the pain from his wounds, but he is pulled back to consciousness when Ku holds his hand. Mizik and the duo exit the Earth's atmosphere towards an unknown destination. The movie concludes with a look at the planet's evolution from the catastrophic aftermath of the asteroid impact to a long icy age, and finally to modern civilization, at which point Adam Driver is born and stars in this movie, and the horrific cycle continues.